I'm so pleased to be introducing Andre Gafford from Axis Sky Renewables, founder of Axis Sky.
Thank you, thank you. All right. Testing, okay. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Andre Gafford, Axis Sky Renewables. I'm not going to tell everybody around here or in this room about how much we need power, right? Everybody knows that. We've been talking about it for the entire day, right? Whether it's AI and data centers, vehicles, or my daughter's cell phone. We need power, gotta have it, right? I'm here to talk about ways to get us power that are green, that provide for on a grid scale, and that are efficient and affordable, right? So Axis Sky Renewable is a reimagined wind turbine company, right? Vertical axis wind turbines, and we'll get into that in a second. All right. So why vertical axis? Because this particular model that we've come up with is less expensive to build, maintain, and deploy, right? All of the issues that we have right now in offshore wind, it's too expensive, right? Too expensive, either your power bill goes up, the developers are losing money, or you can't find the materials to deploy them, right? These particular wind turbines are built with 3 bendable blades, right? These are essentially blades under tension with steel cables, right? Those steel cables put on the pressure and allow the turbine to expand, and then they release the pressure, which brings the turbine back in. Allows for us to be easy to deploy because we're sitting on a TLP, we're floating, right? So floating, less expensive, and easy to deploy compared to our traditional offshore wind turbines, which are monopiles into the ocean floor, taking time, taking a lot of steel. Steel prices, I don't know if you guys have heard, have gone up pretty substantially in the last few months. So this is what we're trying to offer. This is the difference between a traditional horizontal wind turbine and what we're offering, right? The steel cables replace the actual tower, right? So most of your steel, 60% of your steel is in that tower. We replace that with steel cables, which reduces your CapEx, right? We're using those blades under tension, and the generator and the cell are at the base of my turbine, right? So if you know about offshore wind, you're going offshore to address any issues with your turbine, address any issues with your generator, which is way up in the air. You're usually using an extremely tall, extremely difficult ladder that these brave individuals are using and going up, or you're using helicopters or heavy equipment to get to that, to get access to those portions of the turbine. Not with us, right? You pull up to the vessel with a boat, generator is at the base, gearbox at the base, all your moving parts, which are minimal, are at the base of this turbine, so you can service and maintain it from the bottom level. You don't need helicopters, you don't need the expensive equipment that you would traditionally need, right? When it comes to disturbing the ocean floor, well, we had a lot of noise last year and year before about, wind turbines, vibrations. Well, this is TLP, right? Same technology oil and gas has been using for decades, right? It's no different. So if we can drill into the ocean floor and extract oil, I'm pretty sure you can put a fan on top of the ocean and not be disruptive to the ocean floor, right? So this is our cost per megawatt hour. When you look at traditional floating, you're looking at somewhere around $240 to $100 per megawatt hour, which is extremely expensive, right, flat out. Fixed bottom, you're looking at somewhere around $150 to $90 per megawatt hour right now, right? And that's going to go up based on the amount of inventory that the supply chain constraints are putting on you. Our model is in between $60 and $50 per megawatt hour, simply because we're reducing some of the pain points that are plagued the rest of the industry. So this is our licensing model, right? We are at a TRL 4 right now, which we're still pretty early, pre-seed company, but the plan is to be able to license our technology to some of the bigger offshore developers and work through manufacturing contacts that we've developed during this process to be able to deploy this technology and then sell consulting services and repair services afterwards. All right. So, Andre, how did you get into this? I've had this question many, many times. All right. My history in the energy industry spans a little bit more than 25 years, right? Recently, and most recently in my other life, I worked for the largest offshore wind developer in the world, a company called Ørsted. I've also worked for BP, Equinor, and other companies that have been deep in the offshore wind development game, right? So those are companies that I've worked with, worked for, been involved in that process so that I can understand and know what it takes and where the pain points are and how to address them. That lovely lady next to me is my wife, but she is also the CFO of this company. She's experienced with major financial institutions and been working in that industry for quite some time. We also partnered with FedTech, Excel, Greentown Labs, and a few other companies. This technology is patented from the Department of Energy laboratories. We are already set. The technology needs a few more tweaks because that's what we want to make it ready for manufacturing. But when it comes to a solution that addresses every issue we have, when it comes to being too expensive, being too close to shore, this is 60 meters and further out, right? So it's not an eyesore. You can create the same amount of energy with less amount of fuel because the most of your offshore wind costs is cabling, right? The cabling between your wind turbines. But this particular model can be placed close together, right? They can be placed closer together because they feed off of each other because they spin on the vertical, right? Allowing you to create the same amount of electricity or more in a shorter span or shorter amount of ocean space, right? Less expensive, easier to deploy, easier to maintain. And I think it looks a little bit better too, all right? That's Axis Sky Renewables. We're turning wind on a new axis. Come join us.
Thank you so much, Andre. Does anybody have questions?
Sure.
Love your technology. I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to decide on one. What do you think is the biggest obstacle for universal adoption of this technology outside of policy?
Outside of policy, good.
Yeah.
Bias, right? Engineers, and no offense to all the engineers in the room, engineers are creatures of habit, right? We know what works and what doesn't work, and we're used to sticking with the same technology. And if I grab a couple words from the panelists about a half hour ago, that's part of our problem when it comes to evolving, right? We use the same concepts over and over again. But when it comes to wind technology, it's been around for centuries, right? Now, you're doing the same thing. You're getting bigger and bigger when it comes to wind turbines. You're spending more money to create them. You're making them even larger. You're having more problems getting them actually into the water and being able to supply them. The costs are going up. The only way you fix those costs are by economies of scale, by producing more. Well, if we think about it as a different perspective, and you make the base product cheaper, right? You make it more economical on the base, and you figure out a way to be more consistent by using a different form of wind, right? Because the axis flows on the vertical, right? It's omnidirectional. I don't have to turn my blades into the wind like you would with a traditional wind turbine. Any way the wind blows allows me to capture that wind, right? I'm offshore because the winds are more consistent, right? You don't have to be as judicious about your wind location when you're offshore as opposed to being onshore. And if you're in an area such as like Chile or California offshore, you want to be further out. You don't want to disturb the natural beauty that everybody comes there and enjoys, right? Addressing those issues gives us the opportunity to give people power that they need, but also give them the flexibility, right? But you have to buy into it, right? You have to say, okay, I'm tired of doing the same thing that Don Quixote used to chase around, and say we have to look at things a little differently. So that's the biggest hurdle.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. Do your turbines help address any of the supply chain bottlenecks that traditional wind turbines are facing now, whether in the form of the blades themselves or the turbines?
So traditional wind turbines have inventory issues because of the actual composites that they use for the wind turbine. These have similar, but because this, I don't have the picture up, but the blades are designed to be created in segments, which allows us to be a little bit more flexible with how we create this technology, right? We've got some trade issues going on right now, which we're trying to navigate, but all in all, the ability to produce these are not as hampered as they would be with a traditional wind turbine because we don't have as many moving parts as well.
Hi. Do you worry about your turbine tipping over in wind?
No.
No.
So one of the great features of this wind turbine is that those cables, those steel cables in the middle, when that wind turbine says, okay, there's a storm coming, right? Hurricane, Gulf of Mexico, you have to be hurricane rated, category 4 hurricane rated. Most wind turbines can't do that. But this, because those steel cables can release the tension, that turbine becomes essentially a flagpole in the water, right? It's similar to a buoy at that point and enables us to be able to sustain those winds and keep the infrastructure together, right? As soon as that storm is passed, we can then open those back up and then be able to create electricity again. So when it comes to tipping over, we're sitting on a TLP that understands exactly where that where that turbine is going, where it should be, keeping it level. There is a mooring line that keeps us to the ocean floor. We're a lot more stable and a lot more consistent than any of the offshore wind turbines you see now.
Can people haul it away?
Say again?
Can people haul it away because it's not attached to the floor?
No, you can't haul it away unless you've got some pretty strong people, and some mighty good equipment. But no, it's exactly the same technology you would see on a TLP for offshore oil and gas. And I worked in offshore oil and gas for quite a while too, so I'm pretty familiar, and it's not going anywhere. Yes, sir.
For the sake of time, we're going to have to move on. But for any of you that do have questions, please, we have a networking break at 3. You can come and find Andre then and ask him any of your questions. But the next founder that we have, thank you.